So, welcome to the opening event of the meeting of the European Action Coalition for the Right to Housing and the Right to the City. We have to start now. We have the difficulty that we do an online streaming of this event. So, because here usually if we say we start at 8, we start rather at 9. But because people are waiting online, we will start now. Wow. The acoustics is impressive. So, we already yesterday met in the squatted neighborhood of Prosvika, and we already have a whole day of workshops in the squat Notara 26. We are a bit tired, but we will do our best. We have fantastic people here to speak, and Eva will start and introduce the coalition.
Now you hear me, yes. Okay, so I'm Eva. Together with Jan, we are facilitators of this European Action Coalition for the Right to Housing and to the City. So the European Action Coalition is a coalition of grassroots movements. Really? No. Okay. So, it's a coalition of grassroots movements around Europe that do actions and are active in the struggles for housing and the city in a lot of ways, with a lot of ideas, actions, political direction, etc. So this coalition exists since 2013. We meet twice per year in a different city of Europe. This year it is our second meeting for 2022, and we decided to do it in Athens to support the struggles in Athens, and specifically the struggles that occur now in Exarchia. And this is why the meeting is taking place in Exarchia. You will find a program of all the activities we organize here in the table. I invite you after the event to discover our program. And this weekend we have a full weekend of events, workshops taking place, so we can exchange some skills, knowledge, ideas, concepts, meet each other and try to create a transnational movement for housing justice. So I think this is it for the coalition. Just to say a few numbers, we are 36 grassroots movements for the moment who are members of the coalition from 20 different countries, and we are growing more and more. So we hope that soon actions through Europe for the question of right to housing and to the city will also be more and more connected and more transnational.
And the topic of the debate tonight is the topic of the debate tonight is we can't pay, we won't pay. I think it's quite clear. A lot of us are facing energy bills that are skyrocketing and they cannot pay anymore. A lot of us, people of struggle, people from the movement, try to organize resistance and to politicize this subject. And we have some of these people here. And in the first round, they will introduce their approach. And after, we will have time for questions, and we also have some questions. And we will start with Ben from Don't Pay UK. Don't Pay UK is, as far as we know, the biggest campaign at the moment in Europe. And he will explain more now. Wait, I will give you this.
Hi, is this on? Hello. Hi, my name's Ben, and I'm from the Don't Pay UK campaign, which is a campaign against energy bills, which, as we know, are going up across the board. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the origins of the campaign, and so I'm not so English. Sorry. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the origins of the campaign, what the effects of that were, and then what sort of the potentials are for where it might go next. So there were two kind of reasons for setting up the campaign, and the first of which I'll talk about briefly, and the second I'll talk about for the rest of the time. The first was simply to deny the far right in Britain the ability to organise around energy bills. Traditionally in Britain...
Sorry, Ben. We have to say to the Greek people that there is translation for them, and they can take some technical equipment from there if they don't understand English. Thank you. Για όσους δεν μιλάνε αγγλικά, υπάρχει μετάφραση στα ελληνικά. Μπορείτε να πάρετε ένα ακουστικό από εκεί, ένα τραπεζάκι που είναι εκεί, και υπάρχουν μεταφραστές που τους ευχαριστούμε θερμά που θα μας κάνουν τη μετάφραση σήμερα.
So traditionally, the far right in Britain have organised around energy, fuel prices.
Sorry, you have to wear this.
I have to wear it as well. So we wanted to make sure that the response to this crisis was focused on profits and not attempts to blame this on migration or other aspects. But the second ambition of the campaign really was to collectivize the mass default that was clearly already in motion. Every year in Britain, over 30,000 people or 15,000 people a year, they die from fuel poverty. And the energy bills, when they were forecast to go up 4 or 5 times, you can see what that will mean for deaths, for poverties. And we realized that people simply would not be able to pay this. And so instead of allowing people to face this crisis alone as individuals, we tried to collectivize this default by simply saying, well, if you can't pay, like, don't pay. And we'll turn this into a political response to the crisis. And this idea was with a few friends. We said, well, how do we turn this into something that might go? And this is just an idea, and maybe loads of people think this is a bad idea. So we said, okay, well, what will we do? Well, we first came up with the idea of saying we'll only do it if 1 million people come with us. And the idea was to create this strike threshold that would give everyone the confidence to start acting collectively. And the second thing we did is we said, okay, well, we'll set a date because the energy bills were forecast to increase on October the 1st. So we say if we get to October the 1st, we'll go if you've got 1 million people. And then we made a very simple website that just said, like, if you can't pay your bills, sign up, you give us your email address, and we're going to start building a movement together. And to see if anyone liked this idea, we printed 20,000 leaflets. We went to this march of the trade unions, and we handed out the leaflets to see what would happen. And very, very quickly, things took off. Suddenly, it went viral on the internet. People were talking about it. The media got very interested, and they started building it. And suddenly, tens of thousands of people very quickly signed up. So what we did next is we tried to roll out sort of local groups across the country. And the way we did this was that we emailed everyone. They would sign up with their email and their postcode. And we would try and draw people around their local neighborhoods so they could meet their neighbors and people around. Obviously, there's the risk of reprisals from the energy companies. So organizing in this very local way was to try and preempt the need to defend communities from that. And we started putting together people who would then organize within their local neighborhoods. We made it very easy for people to buy leaflets for us that they could just order online and they would be delivered to their house. And we sent out over like 2.5 million leaflets in the space of a few months from people just buying them in blocks of 500. And all across the country, people start saying, we're going to do this. And for us, it was kind of like politics was a little bit on easy mode because the government was in crisis. Boris Johnson wasn't really there. And the Conservative Party were having a leadership challenge. And Liz Truss, the woman that went on to win but then lose, said she's not going to do anything about the crisis. She said, it's not our problem. We don't believe in handouts. And people are getting more and more nervous as October is getting closer and the levels are going up. We got told in the summer from some friends who worked in the government that the energy companies had gone to the government and that they were terrified and they told the government they had to stop it. And we later found out, just a few weeks ago, from documents that were released, that the energy companies said that if 1 million people went on strike, every company in the British energy sector would go bankrupt within months, that they would take down the entire energy sector. And not only that, polling was showing that up to 3 million people in Britain were prepared to not pay their energy bills on October the 1st, and that over 70% of the country had heard about the Don't Pay campaign. And so suddenly the government was saying, we're not going to do anything. We're suddenly like, we're going to put an unlimited amount of money behind subsidizing the bills. And this was like quite a huge change in position. And it was a huge victory for the amount of pressure that was being put on the government. But like any victory, it's kind of partial and weird. So for starters, everyone's energy bills doubled. They didn't stay at the level they were. Our demands were to reverse the increases. Well, the bills still doubled. They just didn't go up 4 or 5 times. So many people this winter will still be cold. They will still be hungry. But moreover, the way they are paying for that isn't by taxing the profits of the oil and energy companies. It's by borrowing against our taxes. So we are basically paying to subsidize the profits of the oil companies while our bills double. So this is very bad. But the strange turn of events is that this then brings down the government. So a few weeks later, they put out a budget and they say, we're going to also cut taxes for the rich. We're going to try and do all this additional uncosted spending. And the financial markets are just like, no. And the reason that they were not able to get that through is because they'd pledged about £100 billion for the energy bills in unfunded spending on the energy companies. So in a sort of weird way of things going sideways, the campaign is partially responsible for bringing down Liz Truss's government. It lasted about 28 days. But this means we've got a new guy, and this guy, he's married to a billionaire, he's worth about £700 million, and like all of the Conservatives, he doesn't care about working people either. And he's immediately rowed back this guarantee. He says now that in April, then they're just going to look after the very poorest, but everyone else's bills will go up. And so come April the 1st, we're again looking at increases of 4 or 5 times in the cost of energy, and again, people will not be able to pay it. So, from December the 1st, Don't Pay is now just calling for a strike, because already we're seeing like an estimated 2 million people are now not paying their bills. The amount of people who are again already in default, many already couldn't pay, the bills have doubled, they can't pay now. We no longer want to be a brake on action, so we're going to go again for a strike on December the 1st. And with this, we'll see what happens. Many people are in credit on their energy account, but come April the 1st, very early in the new year, that's when bills are really going to increase. And so we're starting to build again for a new strike on December the 1st. And as we get into the discussion, I'm sure we can take out some of the details around that. Thanks.
I don't know who's next.
Introduce yourself.
Okay. But you have to take this one. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Petros Stavru from the Greek movement Campania, which his name is Devieno. Literally in Greeks, Devieno, it has a meaning of I'm not dating or I'm not come out, but in everyday language, it means we cannot afford the everyday cost of living. Devieno is the new movement, a new campaign. It's not so much time where we can put some no.
I have no experience with this technology.
Okay. It's okay now? And we try our purpose is to put in Greek society some real hot issues about the cost of living. Where is, for my opinion, is 2 or 3 main cases with specificities in Greek case. The first point is that in Greece inflation is about 10%, but when we try to find this number in families, in poor families, which earning less than 800 euros per month. This number of inflation is about 40%. These numbers show us an economic disaster that did not appear like it even in the era of the memoranda policies. Before this era, after the pandemic, here in Greece, we had the era of memoranda politics, which the main result of this politic was that the month earnings of the working people faced a reduction of about 25%. And another great problem was that we had the higher percentage of non-performing loans for house construction in Europe. The second real problem at that times is that the energy expenditure in Greece, both for household and non-household consumers, record the highest pre-fiscal intervention prices in the euro, because the Greek right government of Mitsotakis of Nea Demokratia finally decided to take some fiscal measures to overcome the extremely difficult situation of the poor families. But after the fiscal expenditure, the high price remains in energy Greece because due to a very large extent of the market specificities of the Greek energy exchange and to the weight of natural gas in the final formation of the energy price, and because of the very high intermediate cost. The third problem of housing cost in Greece are over 40% of the monthly income. The problem is exacerbated if we turn our focus to the small houses of few square meters that are rented for young people. Although in the 20 years between 2000 and 2020, all this period, real property price increase in Greece much less than the rest of the OECD countries, but with the exception of Japan, our purchase has become very difficult for Greeks who saw their incomes shrinking in the decade of memoranda. The real problem in Greece is the problem of supply and construction of new homes and a problem of no existence of rent controls. So in Greece today, the month cost of food plus housing plus energy bills exceed the month incomes below the median wage. So in Greece today, the cost of food plus housing plus energy bills is not the real problem, is not the absolute poverty, but the dramatic expansion of the material deprivation of our lives.
Okay.
Hi, now. Hi, I'm Mari from an organization called Sindicat de Llogateres, that it's basically renters union. It was born in Catalonia 5 years ago, because after the big crisis in 2008, this big crisis, what made the target of this crisis was people with mortgage. Sorry, this word is always, and it spawned a series of a chain reaction of evictions of banks and big corporations owning the buildings and the flats they were evicting people from, and this spawned movements like PA. It's a platform of people affected by mortgage, but after all of that happened, it was clear that there was a shift of focus. They could take more profit they could not make more profit from mortgage anymore, and the focus was going to be rent, and there was nothing protecting the renters. So a group of people, before they had the problems, it was not a group of people having the problem that reacted, but a group of people that saw that we needed that, because people was starting to lose their houses, and they unioned. And since then we've grown a lot. We've grown in affiliates, in coordination, but we've also learned a lot of lessons, what works, what does not work, and how to turn things that does not work, but how to make them work in the end a bit. And one of the strongest campaigns we have is one we call Enschedem, that literally means we stay. And that's when people come to one of us assemblies. We have weekly assemblies where everybody sits down in a circle, people that's been years in the syndicate, people that's newly come, because everybody is an affiliate, so everybody is it's totally horizontal. And the people with the housing problem comes there, explains their problem, and everybody gives their advice. I would do this. In my case, it worked like that, and what we do is help each other with advice, with tools we already used, with expertise. So it's not like an ONG that people comes, I have this problem, and in a few weeks, this is the solution. No. You have to tackle your problem, you have to learn how to fight it, and this makes that you work on your problem, but you also work on the problem of all the other affiliates, and creates a web of people that learns all about their rights, about what they can do and what, even if it's not legal, because the law is not in our favor, but we tell them that it's okay. Sometimes a law is unfair, and you don't have to follow it. And it's a very scary thought if you never have done that before. But we tell them that. And in Skadem, we stay, it's about that. We tell people they don't have to leave their houses. Only a judge, only a paper signed by a judge can take you out of your house. So even if the landlord says, no, you have to leave within a month, you don't have to go. You can stay in your house until a judge says otherwise. We try not to get to that. And the thing is, you stay, you keep paying what you always paid, you accept no raises, and then as a union, not you as a person, but everybody as a union, we go there and tell them, okay, we want to sit and talk and see what happens. Sometimes just that helps get an agreement very quick. Sometimes it's a very long fight, but this works for most of the cases, and it's our strongest tool, because most of the times we don't think about it. We just do it because it works and it empowers people. But it's kind of a strike, but it's a partial strike. It's not, we don't say don't pay anything, but you don't stop paying, but you don't pay what they want. You pay what you what you want, and you don't leave when they say you leave. You leave, if you have to leave, you will leave in your own terms. And that's is very powerful. But what happened with this is when the pandemic struck in 2020, suddenly this disrupted all of our activities because we couldn't leave our houses. In Spain, there was a total lockdown for nearly 3 months, and we couldn't meet in assemblies. We tried to make it online, but it was very difficult for people that was not already in the organization to come to talk to us. And we started to receive emails and emails even before the month of March finished, that it was the first month of the pandemic, of people telling, I've lost my job, I've lost my income, I don't know how I'm going to pay the next month. It was not a thing of maybe in 3 months I won't be able to pay. It was immediate, and people was very scared because they didn't know what to do, and the government was taking a lot of measures, but none of that was talking about housing. There was no, for people that couldn't go to work, there was this measure. For this other thing, this other measure, but for housing, there was nothing. And we had all these emails, and not only we, all organizations across Spain were receiving these emails. It was not a problem only in Barcelona, not a problem only in Catalonia. So what we did was to organize with all these other groups in very little time, because it was a thing of 1 week or 2. We organized with all the other unions across Spain. We made a web page. We made posters that were sent through email, through Twitter, and everything, and we organized a rent strike. It was a rent strike a bit different from other rent strikes that had been done before in other countries or even in Spain a century ago, because this was not aimed to a landlord. It was a rent against the government. But the rent strike was not only political, it was very political because we wanted the government to react, but it was also a way of telling all these people that they were not going to be the only ones not paying. It's not going to be you, Maria, or you, Pedro, not going to your landlord saying, no, I can't pay. It's going to be 16,000 people, families, sorry, not people, around Spain that joined the strike and told, sorry, we can't pay, so we won't pay. We have to choose between eating or paying the rent, and we choose eating. And this gave people a sense of assurance. It was still very scary because it's something that it's not legal, because you can make a working strike, but rent strike are not legally backed by any law. So it was something very scary, something it has not been done in Spain for a century, but well, we organized and we did it. And we maybe not get 100% of what we wanted from the government, but we managed that before March finished, or really at the end of March, I think it was out the 13th of March and printed officially the 2 of April, a package of measures that gave a bit to a part of these people, a bit of respite, because they could ask, for example, if your contract ended while you were in the pandemic, you could ask for an extension of your contract to your landlord, and they wouldn't be able to say no. They had to say, yes, you had 6 more months because we are in pandemic, you can go see more houses, and this was because of that strike. We also got that you could ask for halving the price or a moratorium. That's why we say it was not 100% what we wanted, because a moratorium in the end meant a debt that the people got, but for that moment at least was a respite. It was, I can pay you, okay, you can pay me later. And it was something that this law allowed the people to go to their landlord and ask. And we got that because we made a strike, because we told the government, there's this problem, and you have to work on something. And I think that for something that we made in a couple of weeks, and in that situation, it was a kind of a success, so it can be done. Maybe you don't get 100%, but it can be done.
Hello. So I'm going to continue talking from about Belgium, what's going on in Belgium. For my part, I'm a member of the housing movement in Brussels and of Action Logement Bruxelles, but here I will talk as a member of the Don't Pay Belgium movement that was launched 3 weeks ago, officially. So it's quite new, and so we do not have, so much experience to say, yeah, it starts to work or not, but we're starting something. Basically, we started to meet up between people who are active in different groups and movements, from the anti-debt movement, anti-fascist movement, feminist groups, squats, fights against poverty, ecologist activists, social workers. So we're a group of people knowing each other and who decided that it was important to talk about what was going on energy bills, on energy prices, in a way that was first talking about reducing the prices of the bills, and also talking about to whom we do not want to pay anymore our bills, and the need to socialize energy. So from a leftist perspective, basically. We connected also with the Dutch-speaking part of the country, where a group had started to work, because maybe you may know that in Belgium there are 2 major languages, French and Dutch, and the Dutch-speaking part of the country is 2/3 of the population, so it's not a minority, it's a major part of the country. And here there was a group called Wij betalen niet, which is we don't pay in Dutch, who had started from a cooperative cafe, and their aim was to mobilize inhabitants who are not familiar with self-organization, to mobilize them and claim that they would not and they could not pay their bills. So we started to connect with these people, and together we decided that we had to launch a campaign, a nationwide campaign, a bilingual campaign, which is something in Belgium. And for this we got support from associations who have provided us with technical support, expertise support, meaning like legal knowledge, basically, and also means to create a number of tools that we are working on now. And also we started to connect with international groups, so people who are here. I just want to say a few words about the Belgium context, because I think it's important to get where we're trying to go. So first, in Belgium, power is regionalized. So you have 3 regions and the federal government. 2/3 of the country, so the Dutch-speaking region, is dominated by the extreme right. There are 2 major extreme right parties dominating the country. So it was also an important thing for us to take this into account, because there is the whole storytelling around a number of things that is shaped by the extreme right movements. And it was important to be here with another narrative. It is important to be here with another narrative. Also in Belgium there are many associations, many institutionalized trade unions, and these groups are important because they help keep the pressure on the federal government. So this is probably the reason why there are a number of measures that have been added months after months since the summer to mitigate the impact on the very huge rise in energy prices. But there is a need for grassroots movements and for more radical movements to keep on putting the pressure and come with more radical proposals, because there is always a risk that at some point there is some compromise being made with the government and then we're screwed. Also something else is that there is still a fairly strong social security and somehow public support. So for example, there is a social price for energy, and there has been several extensions to this social price in the past weeks and months. There are also a number of social workers who provide very important work supporting people in difficulty. There also has been a moratorium on energy cuts that has been decided. It's temporary, but it exists. So these measures mitigate the effects of the high energy increase, but it also kind of possibly calms down the pressure that we can put on the government. And however, the thing is that there is still no cap on prices that is being discussed or decided. And there is still very, very little discussion on the possibility to forbid this capture of crazy profits by the energy companies and to socialize also these energy companies. This is something we really want to put forward. The other thing that is still going on is that there is important precarity in housing and in energy-wise in Belgium, and more specifically in the Brussels region. Just to give you a few figures, because I think it's very, it explained the whole thing. In 2020, where there were low prices, historically low prices of energy, in Brussels there was 1 person out of 4 who was facing energy precarity in a form or the other. In terms of housing, another figure is that 1 kid out of 3 is living in an unhealthy house in Brussels. And another figure is that 1 person out of 2 in Brussels could have access to social housing, but there is almost no social housing, so they don't, and they pay a rent on the private market, so it's much too high. So this crazy increase in energy prices came on a quite fragile base, on already very high and increasing rental costs, and on an energetic situation that was already quite problematic. And some specialists of the energy question, they talk of an increase in prices that is so crazy that it could become a second rent, come to the equivalent amount to a second rent for this family. So I'll just finish very quickly telling what we concretely do. So first, our objective is to claim for a decrease in energy bills and a socialization of energy, the production, the distribution of energy. To do that, what we do is that we try to propose tools. And yeah, I forgot to say an important thing, that of course what happened in the UK with the Don't Pay UK movement was very important inspiration for us, and support, technical support also. We just took the code of their website and duplicated it, for example. And I mean, it helps, it goes quickly, it's cheaper, and it's efficient. But so in terms of tool, what we started to do first was an information channel, because what we saw from the very beginning, and that was a trigger to create a group, We Don't Pay in Belgium, was that there was many groups on the social networks trying to gather people around their situation of crazy bills, and people sharing the amounts that they are supposed to pay and they just can't pay, and they don't understand what's going on because these bills are just illogical. It's like, it makes no sense. And so there are many groups setting up online with very little capacity to organize in real, but also with quite, for some of them, or for many of them, I don't know, a discourse that is not clear and very confusing, and that is a good ground for some extreme right ideas to be promoted, and that's in fact what we see happening. So we started this information channel on social network, but we also launched, so that was 2 weeks ago precisely, a website, this website, with a counter, with the same goal, like meaning we want to count how many of us there are who can't pay and how many of us do not want to pay, to be able to get connected. But we also want to provide practical information, so we are busy preparing brochures with practical information on what do you have a right to, what are the legal risks you take if you don't pay, or if you do this, just paying part, etc., etc. And also brochure on how to get organized locally. And we started in different cities of Belgium from different places and from different groups to organize popular assemblies. So we'll see where it takes us.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Emmanuel, in Greek Manolis. I live here in Athens, in Greece, and I'm part of the Gastivis collective. So I will say a few words about this collective, what we do, who we are. We're actually a small collective, like 12 people around Europe and abroad. Our work has to do with gas. You can probably guess from the name, gas and activists, so the name is like Gastivists. Our main focus is gas because it's like the energy resource that right now we use mostly, we're most dependent. And that's why we focus on that. But in the same time, we want to approach this topic also from the political aspect, the geopolitical aspect. So we try to work in many different levels when it comes to the environment. But we are an environmental collective. So our focus is, of course, about environment. Our work is transnational. We try to connect with other countries. As I said, everything is interconnected. There are like many geopolitical things happening around. So for us, it's extremely important to connect with other countries, with other movements, and see what we can do to fight in these common finds, not only in Europe, but also in other countries and other regions. I just came actually a few hours before from Turkey. There was a meeting there, also trying to connect movements from the region. We connect also with regions in with movements in Middle East. And of course our fights are intersectional, because we realize that climate affects other issues as well. We see tensions, wars going around. So all these things don't have to do only with environment. But more things come with this. So, as I mentioned before, we're dependent on gas in this fossil fuel, and probably you already feel it around. There is instability with the war that's happening. There are tensions. We have crisis, and this, of course, we can feel it with the cost of living. So yeah, let's talk about what we do actually. As I'm located here in Greece, I work mostly with movements around the region of Mediterranean Sea, but other members of the collective try also to connect movements in Europe, and here we come with a cost of living network. That is a network that tried to connect people, initiatives around Europe to see what's happening, what we can do. Actually, a lot of the initiatives that are already presented were invited and give information about their work. So actually, it's like a platform, like a meeting. We meet every 2 weeks online, and we try to share with people information, make discussions, share tools, so all this information can be spread in whole Europe. Because maybe some parts of Europe are more organized, have more experience, but that's not the case everywhere. So that's a really important part of our work, to connect and share this information. Actually, we just came out with research, about 10 European countries, about the cost of living and the energy crisis, like information about electric prices, inflation levels, unemployment, minimum wage, what are the policy measures that the governments are taking, and of course the social movements, social movement responses, their campaigns, their actions, how do they respond to the crisis, who are they, who are the main actors in these countries. So yeah, I'm really happy to be invited here because there are many, actually that's how I was invited, exactly because we try to connect with other movements, and we, even though we are not responsible for this crisis, unfortunately we are the ones that we have to pay and deal with this crisis. So even though our demands in some cases sound different, like housing crisis or like bills, eventually all of these different fights conclude that we have to deal with all these things, with all this crisis, we have to pay. So eventually the struggle is the same. We have to survive, and I think if we connect all the struggles and our demands and our fights, we can create something really powerful. So let's see, I'm really curious to see how this will evolve. We will have more workshops next day, so we will try to elaborate. From my part, I will try to deep dive more on the environmental parts, why we are here, why we have this energy crisis, but also for solutions, and hopefully we can all connect more and develop a strong movement here in Greece as well. So yeah, there's few words for our work, and let's see how it goes. It's an open invitation.
Hello. Okay, now I'm a bit insecure with this technology. Also, the plan was to introduce the friends and explain a bit the bridges, but I feel you did it very well already. We want to open the floor now for the first round of clarification questions, if there are. Me, for example, I'm super curious, what does it mean you announce a strike for the 1st of December? What is your plan? But we maybe collect some questions. You can direct them directly to one of the comrades, or more general, or also some statements. But I'm not sure now for this microphone, the second one, if we can pass it all the time, or is it okay? It's for the translation, huh? You need it? Okay, we will pass it. Okay.
This one?
Yes. I don't know. Yes, for the
Hello. Yeah. Well, my question in general, but maybe I'm curious more because I know less regarding the movements of we can't pay, we won't pay, of UK and Brussels. And it's regarding the plans of having a resistance cashier, I don't know how you say it in English, caja de resistencia, I don't know how you say it in English. Like, it would be like an amount of money stashed and it's resistance money. And I'll explain why I have this doubt. It's because, well, I'm part also of the Sindicat de Llogateres de Catalunya, and when we did the rent strike, one of the main things that we found that was hard to follow up and also to not leave alone people so they were not so afraid to do the strike and to do this disobedience against capital, being it landlords, being it expropriations, being it energy bills or whatever. Is the consequences. So not only the fact that you can say in a brochure, no, like what are the risks or what are the possible consequences, but maybe having a backup plan for when that arrives and having that collective backup plan. So the collectiveness is not only at the beginning and it's not only in the action plan and it's not only in the strategy, which is absolutely awesome, but it's also when the consequences arrive and they're collective consequences and there are like people that can actually, myself, that wouldn't be able to face that if I'm alone and if there's not a resistance, also monetary backup plan. And also I'm saying this because I think given the rising living cost, given inflation, etc., all these things that we all know, I think that monetary disobedience against capital is going to be more and more for a common and needed strategy, not only rent, not only energy, but in many fields of our life. Even, I don't know, in Spain we were talking lately about going out again and massively rob from multinationals, for example, as a kind of expropriation. Well, you know, like in many fields of our lives that we can't buy food, we can't pay rent, and it's just, we won't stand it anymore in order for some corporations to make millions. So like what is, the backup plan?
Thank you. Kalispera. Hello, everybody. I will try not to offend anybody, but I'm going to pose a provocative question. The cost of living, as you said, we have people from across Europe. It's something that we share across the continent from different countries. But it feels that it's exported in some other countries, like people coming from Western Europe, living in Greece, what we are calling digital nomads. And it will be really interesting from our side or the Greek side to hear how you people from Belgium or the UK or other people in the Western Europe feel about it, and if there is a way to kind of find a common cause to handle it, because it feels that while we are united, everybody is externalizing the problem to the poorer countries, if I can say so. So that's the question. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentations. I'm from Romania. And I would like to ask you all, what do you mean by the socialization of energy companies? So what kind of strategies there exist or proposals in your countries? As far as Romania is concerned, I'm fully agreed that the liberalization of energy prices is the main cause of the increase of living costs. Nevertheless, what can be observed is that even if the state has shares in energy companies, the same things happen. So prices go up because state companies are also functioning under the same logic of market. And these companies also do have shares which are traded on the stock exchange market, so on and so forth. So I don't know. And generally speaking, I was also wondering if you could give us some insights about what's happening in your countries in terms of movements related to high costs of living, and their relation to anti-capitalist, leftist movements, if any, in your countries. Because I guess we cannot avoid this question. So how capitalism, and not only neoliberal capitalism generally speaking, is producing all these crises, and maybe we should think some long-term alternatives to capitalism. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. My question is to the Don't Pay UK and for the other movements, but they are longer, so they have this issue for sure. It's you said that you ask for email and postcode, so you can organize by neighborhoods, and Don't Pay Brussels talk about this issue of the neighborhood are organizing themselves, but they are not very political, so they say, and some of them are not with like identifying the cause of the problem in the largest sense. So how do you deal with this, and how do you make this like a political formation of the issue with a thing in view that the previous question is asking, so to not to repeat this problem again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. My fault. There's a few questions here, which are quite complex. I think the first one to start with is the cost of living crisis and its relationship to capitalism, really. Because if we think about what the cost of living crisis as a phrase means, it means that people can't afford to live. And it's like, what stage of capitalist development are we at where people cannot afford to be alive under the system, right? So this is, these issues are systemic, and the only real way we can start to challenge these issues is through systemic change. I think there's no escaping that fact, and this is why trying to draw these commonalities between struggles and trying to understand how to link them together is going to be so important, because the real ultimate issue here is inequality and unequal distribution of wealth. And so much wealth is now owned by so few that they just attract everything towards them like a black hole, and like everything goes in there. The more they get, thanks to the miracle of compound interest, the more they buy. The more they own, the more they take from you, the more they buy again. My rent in London, and this kind of speaks to our friend at the back about the issue of digital nomads, is kind of people are migrating to other parts of Europe or other countries where it's cheaper to live or it's cheaper to rent, and then leading to the prices increasing there too. And the reason people are leaving London, for example, is that I rent a not particularly good 5-bedroom house. I share it with 5 other people, We live very far from the center of town. I used to live close to the center of town, and then I moved once, and then I moved again, and then I moved again, and now I live very far from the center of town. My rent is £37,000 a year for 5 bedrooms, but the landlord has decided this isn't enough, so he's just put it up to £42,000 a year between 5 of us. And just this is most of our salaries, like, you know, nearly half our wages. So the issues and how we deal with these issues are going to require us to work collaboratively to address the real structural problem, which is that actually the cost of living crisis is that we can't afford to live with capitalism anymore. And I think the way we can start to think about how we can build solidarity between movements and look at a sort of transnational dimension to that is really, it's not going to be by doing exactly the same thing in each country, because the technical situations are different, the compositions of capital are different. Repeating the same thing won't work. What we should try and do, I would suggest, is try and repeat an idea. And I think that idea is the commonality of mass refusal to the crisis and a generalized insubordination to the crisis. And I think this is why we've seen that the slogan "Don't Pay" has been picked up in other countries. There's a Don't Pay Belgium, but there's also been Don't Pay movements in Italy, in other places that say, no, we don't pay either. And I think this idea that we will refuse to pay for the crisis is probably one of the ways we can start to pull these different struggles together. We don't pay for their rent, we don't pay for their increases, and we're going to refuse to allow this to be imposed on us. And I suppose this then leads to what the practical plan is for December the 1st, and how do we deal with the repression that's going to happen. So the idea around drawing groups at a neighborhood scale was so that we could build sort of community support and resistance at a very local area. And the question was asked about how do we politicize those groups? Well, in the first instance, those groups were set up by people who wanted to become organizers from Don't Pay. You could sign up to join the strike, you could sign up to be an organizer. And somewhat unsurprisingly, the people that wanted to be organizers were people that had a background in political organizing. And they were the people that were putting those groups together. And there is a legacy of political organising in Britain. We might be down on our arse at the moment, but we did also have the poll tax, and people do remember that. And so these are the sort of people that have come forward into these groups, and this helps to give a political undercurrent to it. Another way we can try to politicise these groups and deal with the question of repression is political education. In Ireland, where there was a similar movement against water bills, political education was incredibly important. You know, how does people in Scotland, for example, an organisation called Power to the People, they produce these excellent people's research guides. They say this is how the system works, this is your rights, this is what happens. But also the wider questions about the ownership and various different ways of thinking about that to build a collective political attitude towards that. We thought that the resistance, and this is still being worked out, there hasn't been a strike yet, and no plan really survives contact with reality, so what will actually happen, I think we're going to find out. But we kind of thought there'd be 2 real channels. First, there's like a pathway that the energy companies have to follow, and the rules are quite tight, especially over winter. So we wanted to sort of have these open assemblies that would provide practical support and resistance, template letters, template responses, access to debt advisors and to lawyers. Actually looking to the experiences of the PA in Spain was a big model for this, of everyone fighting their own case. And so people would come to these assemblies as kind of the model that we're trying to roll out to different groups across the country. And so people collectively fight their cases together to deal with the repression from the companies. And this is backed up by trying to form practical eviction resistance networks, as we have in housing movements, but to stop bailiffs fitting prepayment meters. And by organising at this local scale, we can reach out with local resources, but also we were trying to be very careful to decentralise the movement, not only to avoid repression from the state at the centre, but also because for this to work on the scale that is necessary of hundreds of thousands, millions of people, that any idea of sort of central command over those people we didn't feel was going to work. So by organising again at this local scale, the ambition would be that people can respond to the needs of their communities and use the resources and expertise that's already there. In many towns there's a friendly solicitor, and in many towns there's people that will help you with certain issues, for example. So this is kind of like a general overview of what the sort of plan was in a sort of much bigger framework, but I'll leave it there because there's big questions.
I'll just continue on 2 other points. Maybe one thing that I just want to say that personally I'm here, sitting here, but I don't feel like I have so much to, we are just at the start with this movement in Belgium. So when you ask how do you think we should get organized and how to build the movement, etc., we'll see. We're trying stuff. I think being here gives us a particular. Sorry, I can't find my words in English. Anyway. It's kind of a particular status to what we're saying, but it's more about sharing what we are experiencing here, as far as I'm concerned, what we are experiencing in Belgium. Also saying, just to make it clear that just because you, sir, here you said about assemblies that are not yet politicized. In fact, I wanted to tell earlier about groups that get organized online, but they don't get organized in real life. And this is where we see a lot of confusion in the discourse. And as far as assemblies in real are concerned, there has been several of them in different cities of Belgium, but it's a start. There are not so many, and for the moment they are, experiencing how to get organized based on past experience that we have and experiences we hear from abroad. On the question of socialization, what it means, it's not only state ownership, because state ownership, we see where it can lead us to. It's public, some kind of public ownership with popular control. And it's to a large extent to be invented, and how we can get there. I just want to take one example. Is what happened in the past with the banks in 2008, 2011. For those who were active already at that time, you might remember that at some point there were many banks that were about to get bankrupt. And a bank that is bankrupt is about a bank that is worth nothing. So you can get it for free. And it's about that. It's like putting pressure on these energy companies. It's putting them in a situation where they are not the stronger part in the negotiation. So you can get to the situation where you can get them. The problem is that most capitalist companies are very much indebted. So you don't want to take the debt, the huge debt that comes with it. So it's also a matter of not taking the debt and forcing like a cancellation of part of the debt of these big companies, or of the banks, or of the energy companies. So it's not that we have a very clear plan on how to get there, but that's basically the idea. And it's mostly a matter of building political power, pressure. And also there was this interesting question about the backup plan and the possible means that we have to defend ourselves against attacks that will come. For those people or groups of people who don't pay, they always counterattack. So we can expect this. It's true that a lot of people in those many movements we listed, they have somehow a culture of the carats, the caisse, these amounts of money that we put together to help ourselves and to support ourselves. Resistance fund or defense fund, struggle fund, strike funds, whatever. There is somehow a culture of this in many movements, but it's small. And here we're talking of something big. And to be honest, we've not started to think about it. We have this, for example, for the anti-eviction front in Brussels, there is a small caisse like this, but it's not even very much used, to be honest. but it's not to the extent of what would be needed to properly resist in case of a strong fight back from the big companies. And I think it's really an interesting point for us. And I'll leave it there to the others. Oh no, there was a solidarity with this house.
Okay, I would like to add a few more things about how we can work practically on all of this common approach to the struggle against the poverty that is coming. Here we have tried to organize a little our work in three different levels. The first level is the information. How we produce a very well-based on research information about what is going on and who is responsible. Because this is, at least in Greece, and I believe that this is not only a problem in Greece, the main media gives another completely different picture of what actually is going on. For example, we were talking also in the research group before, they say that the high prices of the energy is something temporary because of the war, and in a few months everything will be maybe okay, and that's it. And we know very well that this is not the truth. It has nothing to do with the truth. The truth is that the prices has to do with the amazing profits of the companies. And so one of our works is to show this. So here we have a graphic that shows how much they buy the energy, how much they sell the energy, and what is their profit. So the first thing is information. The second thing is to organize. We are trying to create, to push, to participate in any kind of assembly that would be come from bottom up in the different cities, in the different neighborhoods, and put questions on the issue of the poverty. So we have the assembly of the Vienna, but we also participate in other initiatives. For example, there were demonstrations in Athens, in Pagrati, in Patissia, and this Saturday there is another demonstration in another neighborhood in Ilion. So this seems that we have an increasing of the movement, and it's important to support this movement, because from all these small initiatives, we hope that we can create something bigger that will be quite strong to negotiate and put some demands. The third level is to do actions. For the moment, we have certain demands on the energy. We had a demonstration in front of the main building of the electricity. And they don't pay because they don't have to pay. And I can say that at this moment we have 1 million families with notice from the electricity company for cutting the electricity. We have 150,000 families with notice from the banks and the funds for losing their houses. And we don't have enough data for the tenants, because in Greece we don't have a strong tenant movement, and we have to do it. So what we try to do is how to support people against the danger of the auction, and against the danger of eviction, and against the danger of cutting the electricity. And and we are doing a lot of work on this. About the electricity, the latest action we are doing is that we have a group that we are reconnecting the electricity that has been cut, and this works quite good for the moment.
Before I give you the mic, I just want to say that on Sunday morning, from 10:30 to 12:30 in the morning, you can learn how to reconnect the electricity if it's cut in your house. So come. We have a lot of programs here in the table.
Very brief, because I can't answer most of the questions because we don't touch those subjects, but I think I can answer about the question that how to make people more politic in their fight, and I think that's making them participant of it. When they come, as we always find this, when people come to the assembly, the first step is they are scared. They are very scared. They are going to lose their home, and they are terrified. And the first step they learn is it's not them who are going to lose the fight. There's lots of people with the same problem. And this problem is not just because. This problem has a cause. This problem has people that it's responsible for their struggles, it's politicals, great companies, and everything. And this, if the people participate in the solution of the problem, they learn all of this, and in the end they become a political subject. Sometimes I tell them in the assembly, you are here already, you are an activist already, because you came to find a solution. You didn't say, oh, okay, I can't pay, I go to another place. So I think that's very important, not to be condescending with people when they come to us if they are not political, then just make them participant, and they will become political subjects.
Some more questions to discuss, but maybe we open again the floor if you have other questions. For me, it's more interesting to respond to your question.
Okay. Okay. Ah, Lucie. Je peux mettre ça aussi? Ouais, tu dois mettre les deux. Ça, c'est pour la traduction et ça, c'est pour un autre truc. Voilà.
Okay. Hello. I just wanted to ask if at your connaissance, fucking English, at your knowledge, it does exist groups who are reflecting or acting about autonomization in the production of energy. I mean, something with for a house or for a building, and who allow you to produce. I know it would be less, little bit energy, but in the way that you're not connect with the big réseau, the big dictio network. I think it's a very important and interesting thing to begin to do, and I search for people who are working on it.
Thank you. I don't know if it is me that has missed the answer, but I'm still wanting to know how do you, Ben, are organizing this strike on the 1st December? How can you organize a strike on electricity in one day? That's it. Very simple, I think.
What I wanted to ask is, you said before that you were trying to build up a counter narrative to putting the blame on migrants, on people that don't have a residency in your countries. And I wanted to ask, especially where we live in a society where there is a underlying racist discourse, if you think it was possible to get that narrative through to the society, or if you're still struggling with that, and also how the status quo is with right-wing politics that try to put the blame on our current crisis on migrants and minorities. Thanks.
Who wants to start answer?
So I don't have concrete answers when it comes to autonomous communities producing their energies. Of course, there are initiatives. There are examples of energy communities, but I don't know if you mean autonomous regions and communities. At least in Greece, I'm not really aware, but maybe other people know about Europe. But outside of Europe, there are some examples. Right now, it's, and this is actually a good question, because I'm afraid that this situation is not gonna be better for our society. I mean, the energy crisis, the cost of living. Europe is not learning from its mistakes. Even though we're dealing with this crisis, the way we try to deal it is by repeating the same mistakes and keeping the same system that brought us here in this situation. To give for an example, when it comes to energy, Greece right now gonna play a major role on saving Europe in this energy crisis. We're building many platforms to import liquefied gas from all over the globe. We're gonna build the biggest, longest, deepest pipeline in the world to connect with countries from Israel all through Mediterranean, Greece and Europe. So all the plans are towards this direction, being dependent on the same energy sources and the same system that brought us here. And of course, we have to defend this system because there are other interests out there. For example, Turkey also have claims to the regions, to the resources in the sea. So we invest money to defense, to warships, to airplanes, everything. Imagine if all this money were focused somewhere else, focused to us, to people, to society, to deal with the energy crisis, to be more efficient, to be more autonomous, as you said. So for me, it's extremely important to have also these demands, how we demand a more just system, demand climate justice. All these things are really connected, and from what I see, things are not gonna be better. So I think this part with the energy production and the system must be a big and core demands. So yeah, I don't know if there are examples of autonomous regions or if someone wants to add on this. But also comes to the refugee crisis and the immigrants. I mean, we're importing gas from the USA, from Algeria, from Qatar, from Israel. All these are oppressive regimes. They create wars. Israeli regime, for example, is suppressing Palestinian people for all this time. And there are many, many examples. Egypt also, authoritarian regime. We're creating wars. We're creating situations where it's inevitable to increase refugee and immigrant crisis. So it's inevitable. As long as we stay in this system, it is. And here is nationalism coming and becoming bigger and bigger. So it's not a surprise why there is so much blame to immigrants and refugees. But the solution for me is like trying to find a total different system. Otherwise, it's gonna be increase and increase until it booms, maybe, or I don't know.
All right, well, I'll just speak to two questions, one of which is the far right and one of which what the strike is. On the far right in Britain, it's kind of what didn't happen rather than what did happen. So we knew that the far right wanted to take the space around energy bills. The inspiration for Don't Pay was one of the leaders of the far right, a guy called Nigel Farage, being the energy bills are going to cause everyone in this country to go mad. And we're just like, you're right. And if you're saying that, we're going to try and get there first. And so what we tried to do was take the space from them and make sure that the crisis was defined on terms of class and on terms of what it is, which is a crisis of profiteering. And that was very successful. The cost of living crisis is now discussed in terms of excess profits when it comes to oil companies and in terms of class when it comes to social movement. So it's helped to build a class-based analysis around these issues as opposed to fueling the far right. But nonetheless, the discourse in Britain is very bad. All over the British newspapers this week is the crisis of the invasion of asylum seekers who arrive by boats. Britain takes the lowest number of asylum seekers in Europe. There's only a few thousand that come every year, but they speak as if we're being invaded. And this is on the front page of every newspaper at the moment. Consistently in Britain, we see that every time the political and economic situation worsens, the government take even more reactionary measures. In sort of 2014, 2015, they were driving slogans around that were used by the National Front in the 1980s saying, go home, and the government was literally driving these around. Now they have effectively created concentration camps to process asylum seekers, and they boast about how they dream of deporting them to Rwanda. Like it's getting more and more depraved, so it remains a very real issue, and it's why we need to really focus on class-based responses. In terms of what the strike is a mass non-payment strike. So you don't pay your bill, and then we deal with the consequences collectively by fighting it. For many people, they're already in that position of not paying because they simply cannot afford it. So the idea is to create a collective political response to that. In terms of how it's organized, there is two ways this is being done. The first way was just complete chaos because the situation was quite urgent and the campaign was quite new. It was set up only in June. So the idea was just to release the idea and see if people came up to it. And then from that, once it's in motion, try and form some sort of organization. Now some time has passed, and the initial wave of the strike was met with a political response by the government. A lot more time is being spent building structures from the movement that's emerged. So over 40,000 people signed up to be organizers. There's currently 300,000 people who are given their data into the database. And there's now over 100 regional coordinators who, so the way the groups have been drawn is at neighborhood scale, but then above that to regional coordinators who will look after a certain set of areas. And in turn, there's several hundred of these people, and they meet through a sort of general assembly that now takes decisions about how the struggle goes forward. So that's the sort of general organizing structure. And then within each neighborhood, within each region, people are working to build the strike through conventional organizing tactics that I'm sure you can imagine. But that's kind of how the strike is structured. And then the demands remain unchanged. It's to try and return to the previous price cap before they doubled it. But as part of the process also, there's this idea of having a conversation about a fair price for power. And this speaks to an earlier question about how do we politicize these local groups. And it's by trying to have within these groups discussions about what a fair and social energy system would mean and what measures might be around that. For example, like a minimum allowance of free energy, or like a social tariff, as it's sometimes called. You know, questions like this. So this concept of the fair price for power is part of that wider organizing. But I hope that clarifies a bit.
Okay, I like this invention. We are running out of time slowly, but I think it doesn't matter because anyway, this panel discussion was more a teaser or a trap to catch you, because Saturday morning at 10:30 we will have a workshop here with the same beautiful people and the same thematic. And we would be very happy if a lot of people are coming and discuss in a more horizontal way. We had more questions in our mind. For example, the intersectionality of our struggles. That is how we constructed this panel. Also, we learned something about the practical resistance, but I think there is still a lot of open questions. But maybe a last round, and you can answer shortly, is if we can imagine a transnational movement that gives an answer to this question. And I don't know who wants to start. Maybe we...
This works? Yeah. I think that the intersectionality of everything, it's clear to not only us in the table, but for everybody. We were talking about having to decide if to pay rent or to pay food, or to pay the bills or to pay, and it's even intersectional with work struggles, because when you have to put nearly all your money in rent, bills, and food, you are so tight that you can't say no to your boss when they have shitty demands. So it even affects our work struggles. So it's clear that if we have to work together, we can't work as, we work in housing and only housing. You work in electricity, you in gas. And then if I can see a transnational movement, I think so. Because I really believe that even if each country has its different laws and its particularities, they are very comfortable in their own, they know us and they know how, but if there was a movement and suddenly one day in all the countries in Europe we said, we are not going to pay rent anymore, anyone in Europe, or we are not going to pay bills anymore in all of Europe, it will be very powerful, and I think it's something we have to aim for.
Of course, I agree. I mean, I would love to see intersectionality. I'm already impressed for all the different aspects, and I think there is more space for more groups, different aspects to be invited. I love the part that was mentioned about refugees and immigrants. I would love to see that also as part of this bigger movement. If we struggle with this crisis, there are people out there that are struggling 100 times more than us. Maybe we are even more, we are in a privileged position, at least me, talking about me, I am. So I would like to see this part more. And of course, transnational, I already see a direction going towards there. And I can imagine it even like outside of Europe. I think we are like Eurocentric, not us, but like Europe. And European movements focused mostly in Europe, but I think there is so much power out there, and movements already trying to resist on what's happening, and their crisis is connected with our crisis. So I think there is huge potential for a big, big movement.
Yeah, just adding to that basically we face the same thing. We face big capital, we face big companies, we face multiple landlords who own a lot of things, a lot of buildings, a lot of houses. So I think there's definitely a sense to build an transnational movement on this, and basically the idea is to tell them that we refuse to pay for them to further accumulate. And this mechanism, just as Mary said, is even if we face different situation locally and different legal and political context, the mechanism behind what we feel in our bodies, really, that all these constraints that go further down and that make our lives more complicated day after day, it's the consequence of the same thing. And also there are other parts on which we could struggle together. I think it's not at the same level in different countries, but we all have to face a further destruction of social security. And social security is a so powerful tool to protect us against capital and to build also solidarities and a more resilient society. So that's another aspect that I think would be really interesting to work on at a transnational level. And also because we are facing I mean, we are in Greece here, so you know much more what it's all about, but we will face further austerity. At least in the north, there is still a lot of room for further austerity, and the cost of all the measures that they are implementing at governmental level to make the impact of the energy crisis and of the rise of everything in our lives, to make it less violent, it's on public spendings. So they are indebting us more, and they will impose a cost on us afterwards. So this is also something we will have to struggle and to get organized on, and making it at a transnational level would be of interest also, I think. And basically it's again about opposing a further transfer of wealth to the rich. Because this is what's going on through profits, through dividends, through rents, and through the repayment of credits.
Yeah, I kind of gave my thoughts on this earlier, so I won't speak for too long. But I would obviously agree with the transnational movement, and I imagine that's why we're all here. So I guess the question is, what does that look like? And I guess the first thing I've kind of already said is that it just needs to be a generalized strategy of refusal, I think, because the fundamental root of all these things, the energy crisis, of the housing crisis, these related issues, is simply this transfer of wealth to the rich. And it's now become so extreme that if it goes much further, we're just going back to a sort of feudalism. But the second point I kind of make is that if you look at Britain, like, we should be the warning to the world about what is probably going to happen to Europe now. We don't make anything anymore. Like, our industrial base was destroyed in the 80s to defeat the trade unions. And the biggest export from Britain is the fresh air in the empty shipping containers we send back to China. And the consequence of that is that the British economy is kept afloat by, like, pumping money into housing. This is why the housing crisis, the financialization of housing, is so extreme in Britain. But it's also why so much wealth is getting concentrated upwards. The energy crisis and the spike in energy costs, there's a real risk that Europe will also lose its industrial base. And if the European industrial base goes, everyone in Europe gets a lot poorer, but the pressure on housing as like an alternative asset for use in the economy will grow and grow and grow and grow. And across European cities, we're seeing the financialization of housing, just like in Britain, is spreading. This is becoming the new normal, really, this Anglo-Saxon model. And it has to be resisted because it will just destroy everything. So, I mean, watch out, because you soon will be Britain if you're not careful. And that's why I think this general refusal, like generalizing that the struggle against this process across all of the social terrain is probably the only way out. So, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we have no choice but to connect and interconnect our struggles, because we are living in European economies, in countries, European countries, which are interconnected economies, open economies, interconnected economies, the same enemy. We have a central capital institution like central banks, British Central Bank or the European Central Bank, which give discipline to the markets, and the market give discipline to the companies. So in order to face all this structure, we have to interconnect our struggles.
I have to say that I agree, and I think that the example of what happened in the previous crisis, which was not so far back, the period of 2008-2011, with all this increasing movement with the squares and not only in Europe but also in the Arabic world and etc., shows us that this is something possible. And if we can try to happen again, maybe we will not do the same mistakes because we don't start from the same point. We have learned a lot. So I think that it's worth to try.
So I have the difficult task to close this discussion. I want to say that I'm happy that we had a panel that was both from the north and kind of north, Central Europe, and the south of Europe. We miss so many countries that also fight against high prices, and we have the chance here to have a lot of people coming from Czech Republic, Serbia, Romania, Portugal, so many countries, Sweden, that we didn't hear tonight. So again, I want to invite you to come in our workshops on the weekend. We have also programs in Greek for the people who feel more comfortable. And also, just a phrase I want to add, after hearing all your presentations, and after hearing also Tonia saying that here in Greece we already don't pay, so we don't need a campaign not to pay, but maybe we need a campaign not to be indebted again, and also to be proud not to pay. And I think this is what we have to reach. Yes, so thank you, Lucille, for reminding me that tomorrow, after our small internet discussions, we will meet at Propylea at 7 to go to a demonstration in defense of Exarchia neighborhood and against police repression and violence, and state violence and capitalist violence. Voilà.
And we would like to thank the technicians and the interpreters for their work. And if we cut the video now, please, goodbye internet. I have a practical proposal, because also the beer prices are increasing, and a lot of us cannot afford them anymore in these hipster bars in our neighborhood. I suggest what we do here usually, we go to the stairs.